Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. So as promised, this is the unboxing for the NZXT N7 B650E, so the AMD AM5 variant. We did look at the N7 Z790 in the last video, so if you want to check that out, then I'll link the card on the screen now so you can have a look. But of course, there are people that want to go for the Team Red version, so we're going to be looking at that today. Let's have a little look on the back of the board to start off with, so you can pause this and check out any more details in depth, but of course I'll run you through as we go. Available in white and black like most of the other NZXT motherboards. I've gone for white with the AMD ones and black for the Intel, and I'll also show you the comparison to the B550 board at the end as well, just if you're wondering. Of course there are going to be quite a few changes, but we should show you nonetheless. So of course AM5, that does mean we're using DDR5, does support up to 128 gigabytes, 6000 mega transfers overclocked straight out of the box. Does support AMD Expo and also XMP. As I mentioned in the last video, these are made by ASRock, so if you're familiar with their packaging and layouts and things, then this will feel very familiar. Let's take the board out and put that to the side for the moment and have a look at what we've got below. Left hand side we've got a nice pamphlet, and on the right hand side, the same as the last board actually, we've got three M.2 screws. The Wi-Fi antenna does have Wi-Fi 6E, also Bluetooth on the board as well. And we've got two SATA cables, one of which is right angled. Much like the Z790, not much going on with accessories, but does keep the costs down. And there we have the B650E. So the one main factor between the B650 and the B650E is that this motherboard will allow you to have a Gen 5 graphics card as well as a Gen 5 storage slot. Now with B650 you can optionally have a PCIe slot at Gen 5, but by standard it doesn't come with that. It doesn't have any PCIe Gen 5 lanes. So that's the one big difference, and you do pay for it as well. This is some pricing that I found on scan this morning of some B650 boards, even B650E, and then X670. And of course that does reflect in the price as well. This will retail at £379, but B650E is where you do get your Gen 5 for PCI and potentially storage as well. So let's take this out of its actual foam. Let's have a look at the back quickly. Nice matte motherboard, very on brand with the rest of the board. Again, this is using a 16+2+1 power phase design, and you've also got 90 amp smart power stages as well, which I believe is higher than standard. I think they're generally 60. Of course, to the right we've got our DDR5 slots, as I mentioned, up to 6000 mega transfers per second on OC. XMP, Expo and everything supported as well. You can of course push those memory speeds further if you do a manual overclock. Go around the outside of the board, so top left we've got a 8+4 pin power. We've got our first 4 pin connectors, one is a CPU fan and also an AIO pump. Two of NZXT's proprietary RGB connectors. Inside the cutout we've got 2 additional 4 pin PWMs. Then of course our 24 pin for our power. There's a USB Type-C port. This is USB 3.2 Gen 2. And then on the right angle, we've also got some additional ports. So we've got a USB Type-3, this is Gen 1. 4 SATA ports, which will be 6 gigabits per second. Then we've got an additional USB 3.2 Gen 1 header as well. So additional 4 USB-A ports and then a Type-C with the internal connectors. Down the bottom of the board, we have our front panel connectors with nice onboard power buttons, which I do love to see. 2 more proprietary the NZXT RGB connectors. We've got 3 additional system fans, like I mentioned in the last video. We've got a nice cover over the M.2 slot, so you won't actually be able to access the one that's typically on the left hand side. So they have routed it down to the bottom instead. So again, a total of 7 4-pin PWMs like we see on most motherboards. We've got 3 USB 2.0 ports. We actually saw 2 on the Z790, so additional 1 on this one. And then 2 5-volt addressable RGB connectors. On the last boards we saw a 12-volt. So it's nice that they've given us 2, because a lot of people did complain that they wanted more. So I think that's because of customer feedback. Then last but not least, on the far end, we have got our front panel audio. So being this is a B650E board, we do have potential for a Gen 5 slot, and that has been really beefed up with this heatsink that covers over the first M.2 slot to allow for more heat dissipation because of the speeds and heat that the new drives will generate. So we have a little cover we have to remove, and that is a nice piece of aluminium actually. Real thick, weighty piece. Thermal pad on the back as well. And then we can see our first slot which will be up to Gen 5. That is an 80mm slot as well. We do have some other ones further down. So again, magnetic panels like we've seen on the other boards, another one to take off there as well. Then we've got an additional 2 M.2 slots. Now these are up to 80mm as well, so there isn't any 110mm support, something that we did see on the Z790 variant, so that is just something to remember. But most of the popular drives are 80mm nowadays anyway, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem. There's also a Wi-Fi card underneath as well, like I said, Wi-Fi 6E. Then we've got additional 2 PCI X16 slots. No X1 slots on this board, which is a little bit surprising, but you can use your capture cards in X16 slots either way, so not too much of an issue there. Again, the bottom 2 covers don't have any thermal pads, so make sure you're not going to put any drives you're going to be hitting all the time down there. But of course, your primary one does have a beefy old heatsink anyway, so that's more than likely the one you're going to use. So rear I/O for this board, we have got a HDMI out, as the AM5 processors now do have onboard graphics, so that's always good for troubleshooting. We've got a clear CMOS button, which is always good. A BIOS flash button, which is one thing we didn't see on the Z790, which I did have a little bit of a moan about, so it is nice to see it on the AM5 version. Wi-Fi 6E antennas, we have got 2 USB 2 ports. The first 2 blue USB ports are USB 3.2 Gen 2, and then the additional 4 are USB 3.2 Gen 1. We've also got a 2.5 gig LAN, a USB Type-C 3.2 Gen 2, so 10 gigabits per second. We've also got some simple audio and an SP diff out as well. It's going to be drastically different, but here is the B550 version. Of course, AM4 to AM5, the biggest change, of course. So a few subtle differences. We've got the cutout for the additional 4 pins, because they have been moved from the top, because we've got more of a beefy heatsink for the VRM, which is nice actually, because it is a really heavy duty block. You've got 2 less SATA ports on the newer boards, but I think that's more for the fact that M.2s are available in such capacities now for really cheap prices that you're going to be using those more than, you know, internal SATA drives anyway. Then a couple more changes at the bottom. So we've got the additional NZXT proprietary RGB connectors, and then we have the additional 5V instead of the 12V that we saw on the last gen. Rear I/O is pretty much the same on both boards. We've got 1 additional USB port on the B550, but you know, 1 port's not too much to worry about. So there we go, guys. That was a look at the NZXT N7 B650E motherboard. Do let me know what you think about it down in the comments box below. Interested to see what people think about the pricing as well. You are paying extra for the additional PCIe Gen 5 slot, so yeah, let me know your thoughts and things down below. I'll also add the pricing in the description when it's available, and stay tuned for the future content I've got coming up. Get subscribed and ding the bell if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to NZXT for sending this out for me to look at, and I'll see you all in the next one.